Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching this stream on YouTube or on Rumble. Yesterday, I recorded a podcast conversation with Neil Oliver. Many of you already know Neil. I watched his podcast with Tucker Carlson a few weeks ago, and I was fascinated by his linguistic and intellectual capability to describe and explain what happened during the Corona era. And I am very suspicious of what happened during that time, and I agree with many of his arguments that what happened during the Corona times with the restrictions, the lockdowns, with the digital infrastructure that has been built were very, very fishy, and they were under the table work by governments, non-state actors, WEF, the pharmaceutical industry, etc. So I posted yesterday in a poster on YouTube saying that I recorded a conversation with him. He hosted me on his YouTube channel, and this will be published in 1 week on his podcast. So, of course, I receive different reactions. Some people like him, some people dislike him, but I want to make something clear for everyone watching Syriana Analysis. I in no way or shape ready or be ready in the future to play the left wing, right wing, this decisive politic game. I don't care about people's labels, if they are right, if they are left. At some time, I check into a particular topic and I see that I am completely and wholeheartedly agreeing with the left-wing people who say they are left-wing. And then there are other topics that I look and I see myself completely or wholeheartedly agreeing with people who call themselves or they're called right-wing. And sometimes I partially agree with the left and partially agree with the right, and partially disagree with the left, and partially disagree with the right. So I don't consider myself left or right. I check every topic and every particular file, and I try to use my intellect. I dig in, I research, I read, I write later about it, and accordingly, I make up my mind. Therefore, some people, I understand, they see the world from a left-wing lens, so everything for them is a left-wing issue, and some people see it as only right-wing issues, right? I'm not like these people. Maybe they're right, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, maybe they're wrong. I don't know. But for me, I don't care about the right-wing, left-wing labels, and I don't think that it is a healthy way to address our current affairs. We have a logic, and we are gifted by God to have logic and brains. Therefore, we can judge the situation and every situation the way it is without really being played and fooled by the politicians. This is left, this is right. Now, Neil is, of course, he's accused of being a right-wing conspiracy theorist. So am I. So am I. So I think that if the people aren't doing something right, I don't think they would be labeled these types of labels, especially when it comes, for example, to the corona, to the political issues, etc. And I'm being very blatantly, very, very honest with you. Neil was an amazing host. He allowed me to speak my mind in length. And probably he disagreed with me in some of the cases, but he gave me a huge platform to speak up my mind and say what I think about the conflicts in the Middle East, in Syria, in Palestine, in Iran, and what's the problem with Israel, for example, right? And this is, if Neil's, let's say, following base, is mostly, supposedly or theoretically, are from the right, there would be increasing number of them probably are with Israel. So going to his podcast and saying what I think about Israel, Syria, and Iran, etc., it's important to create bridges with people. Probably you agree or disagree, but most importantly, to reach the audience and try to deliver a different opinion about the different issues or issues that directly impact us in the region, in the Middle East, which doesn't really impact them directly in Britain or in Scotland or in the United States. So I have hosted people who are from the far left to the far right on my channel, and I will go to people's podcasts and platforms regardless of their political leanings, as long as I stay true to myself and I would tell my mind regardless of what the host or the other guests think of. So if you're interested and excited about this podcast, I'm sure you can find Neil's podcast on YouTube. Just type Neil Oliver and you will find his podcast, and he's going to publish it, I think, in 7 days, so in 1 week or so. That would be, so I'm also looking forward for that. It was an over 1 hour of discussion with him. His name is Neil Oliver. Some of them is asking. Neil Oliver. He was on Tucker Carlson's show, and I watched his a conversation in length. I think it was like a 2.5 hours or so, and it was fascinating to hear him and his thoughts and the theories and the conspiracies that he have raised, which could be considered today conspiracies, but in the near future could come true, and people will realize that what is called conspiracy theory today might be a truth in a matter of probably a few months. So what is happening in Ukraine, my friends? This is very terrifying, basically. Of course, there has been discussion and debate among the pundits, among the activists, and people were like, Russia should respond with nuclear attacks against Ukraine. And I told you many times that Ukraine will not come under nuclear attack now. It's not. It's the retaliatory patterns of Russia clearly shows that Russia is a country of self-restraint, and the leaders, we have to thank God that the leaders in Russia nowadays, they are calm-headed and they are not driven by emotions or provocations. If that was the case, and the leaders and the leadership, the military security leadership in Russia were hot-headed and they were driven by provocations and emotions, we would have ended up by now in a World War III scenario. I mean, we are already living a mini World War III situation in Ukraine, but rest assured, the nuclear exchange is not going to be just from one side. If, God forbidden, and we wholeheartedly hope and pray that this day won't come, if Russia responds in a nuclear manner against Ukraine, this is not going to end up in a one-way strike. It could end up in a multiple-way strikes. It could also trigger strikes from other NATO countries. So rest assured, people who are so enthusiastic and thinking like they are the 21st century Rambos and have watched lots of Hollywood movies and thinking this is a game. This is not a game. You shouldn't wish for a nuclear exchange between any sides. You have to pray that this scenario won't come true. And you should also urge and encourage your politicians, especially if you are in Western countries, to encourage them and urge them to pursue diplomatic path. And I don't see this is going to be the case, unfortunately, in the near future. And what's happening nowadays in Ukraine, it seems that the Biden administration, and not Biden himself, the administration itself and the people behind the administration are determined to push the conflict to the maximum with Russia before Trump comes to power, in order to create a very difficult situation for Trump that he cannot handle himself, or try to find a minimum compromise with Russia. So that is going to be today's topic, guys. And I think it's very important first to shed light what happened in Ukraine with this missile attack. What was this unstoppable hypersonic, I don't know, type of a missile that Russia used? And I watched the video and I was terrified because it looked to me something from a science fiction movie. And I'm going to show you some of these videos. But I will start with an article that was published by our friend Thomas Fuzzy on his Substack account. And the title is, "What do we know about Russia's alleged ICBM strike on Ukraine?" So on Thursday, an incident that could mark a significant escalation in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict unfolded when Ukraine's military claimed Russia had launched an intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, at the city of Dnipro in Ukraine. This claim, if true, would represent the first use of an ICBM in a conventional conflict since the advent of such weapons traditionally reserved for nuclear deterrence during the Cold War. ICBMs are very long-range missiles with a range greater than 5,500 kilometers, are primarily designed for nuclear weapons delivery, even though the one allegedly fired by Russia had a conventional warhead. Now, I've been trying to check more about this. I've been trying to check what is this intercontinental ballistic missile is about. So it seems that it's a type of ballistic missile with a range greater than 5,500 kilometers, primarily designed for delivering nuclear warheads. So in this time, basically this warhead that has exploded, or there were multiple of these missiles, didn't carry nuclear warheads. And ICBMs are strategic weapons that can carry conventional, chemical, or biological warheads, but their primary purpose is to deliver nuclear warheads. The range, as we mentioned, is 5,500 kilometers at least. The speed is supersonic. The trajectory is ballistic. The warhead can carry nuclear, conventional, chemical, or biological. And the launching is through on land-based or submarine based launching systems. So the purpose of this type of intercontinental ballistic missiles is they are designed basically to deliver nuclear warheads to targets thousands of miles away, making them a key component of a country's nuclear deterrent. They are also used for delivering conventional warheads, but their primary purpose is nuclear. What are the countries that have these intercontinental ballistic missiles? The United States, Russia, China, France, India, United Kingdom, Israel, and North Korea. Only Pakistan among these nuclear states that doesn't possess the ICBMs. So this is, let's say, in short, what is this ICBM is about. Now, so my software sometimes just freezes. In any way, so President Putin, in a televised address, confirmed a test strike with a new type of intermediate-range ballistic missile, code-named Oreshnik. If you're Russian, please correct me. Is it Oreshnik or it's Oreshnik? So it's like a Russian name called Oreshnik, probably, aimed at Ukrainian military facility. This action comes in the wake of Russia's recent adjustments to its nuclear doctrine, which now includes conditions under which Moscow might use nuclear weapons, notably if attacked by a non-nuclear state supported by a nuclear power. The alleged use of such advanced weaponry could be interpreted as a signal Russia's readiness to escalate in response to provocations. Now, to be honest with you and truthful, Putin was, when he started changing this nuclear doctrine, he wanted to adapt with the current situation in Ukraine, that Ukraine is also attacking inside Russia, and also they have made an incursion inside Russia. So according to the new nuclear doctrine of Russia, if a non-nuclear country, Ukraine, attacks Russia and seriously threatens the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Russian Federation, and because Ukraine is backed by a nuclear power, the United States, the UK, and other nuclear powers basically in the NATO, then Russia reserves its right, or gives itself the right to retaliate or attack Ukraine and other parties supporting Ukraine in that manner with nuclear weapons. So this time, when Putin fired these missiles on Ukraine, these ICBMs, basically, it was, I would say, a warning to the NATO countries that this type of weapons we are ready to use this type of weapons, but this time we are loading it with conventional explosives and we're not loading it with nuclears. But if you insist to escalate further, this could probably trigger or encourage us to load these type of weapons with nuclear warheads. So this is, in my opinion, a warning. Let's see what the Western side will do, because at the current moment, the Ukrainians are firing the American-made and the British-made long-range missiles against Russian targets. Now, If we go back to the article, though the EU quickly labeled the potential ICBM strike as a clear escalation by Putin, the reality is that this is clearly a Russian reaction to escalatory moves by Western nations. Earlier in the week, Ukraine utilized US-made ATACMS and British French Storm Shadow missiles to strike targets within Russia, a significant departure from previous restrictions on the use of these weapons. It is clear that Russia is desperately trying to establish or re-establish some semblance of deterrence in the minds of US and NATO leaders in light of Biden's attempt to escalate the conflict beyond the point of no return before Trump comes into office. The fact that we have reached the stage where Ukraine, NATO, and Russia are engaged in tit-for-tat exchanges with medium, long-range nuclear-capable missiles. ATACMS can also theoretically be modified to carry a nuclear warhead, all while Russia has signaled that it now views NATO as a direct participant in the conflict, should be a wake-up call for everyone, especially us Europeans. So the ATACMS are they have the capacity and they're capable of carrying nuclear warheads if they're modified. So Putin retaliated in a proportionate manner. Let's say that he didn't use nuclear warheads. He used one of these ICBMs that can carry nuclear warheads. And according to Putin, this type of missiles are unstoppable, and there is no technology or an air defense system that NATO or the United States have to intercept and destroy this type of missiles, which means that if, let's say, Russia, for an argument's sake, God forbidden, a nuclear exchange happens and Russia uses one of these missiles, then European countries or America, the United States, cannot stop this type of attacks, not on Ukraine and not on other targets like in the UK, Germany, the United States, and other targets, right? So this is the message I think that was very important to focus on. Now, if we see what other experts are saying in this case, I think it's very important also to shed light on a perspective coming from Hungary. This person, he is a geopolitical analyst at the Budapest-based Center for Fundamental Rights. His name is Koskovics Zoltán, and he says the following. This is a video that purports to show the ICBM attack on the Dnipro. It may show the impact of a ballistic missile carrying a multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle, non-nuclear payload. The launch of this weapon will have triggered early warning systems worldwide because such a launch is immediately assumed to be nuclear. If the missile was launched from Astrakhan, it was done so at a very high trajectory. Even if it is just intermediate range, it would have been clear that the target was Ukraine within seconds. It would have been assumed to be nuclear until the moment of impact. It is highly unusual for this type of expensive and complex weapon to carry a conventional payload. Why did Russia do this? Psychological warfare. In the minutes between the launch was detected and the warhead started detonating, a lot of people in Ukraine and the West will have been delivered a huge emotional shock. To test Biden's response to a single missile nuclear strike on Ukraine, there was no response. Even with a conventional payload, this was the most powerful strike since the war began. The target, potentially an important defense plant, Yuzmash, will have suffered immense damage. Take a look at the video. It looks like from an artificial, like it looks like from an, wow, seriously, like it looks like a scene from a movie, like it's from something from the future, you know? I think it's very scary, and also what's also scary that there was a camera set up here, which means that the Russians had intelligence asset here to install a camera or something here to detect this. I don't know, maybe it's another webcam or camera is there. However, this type of attacks are seriously, look, they're really frightening. Like, this is terrifying. So this type of weapons could carry nuclear. right? So what do we know so far about this? We know that this was for deterrence reasons. This was of psychological warfare from the Russians against the NATO side. And so there is now some debate if the Russians told the Americans about their intentions and what type of weapons they were going to use. And if they told them anything at all, we don't know for sure. The Americans say that they were informed. In any case, using this type of missiles from the Russian side should have enabled and enacted the early nuclear alarm systems of NATO in Eastern Europe, and they didn't react. So the NATO side, they knew that Russians have launched a nuclear-capable missile, but they didn't know if it was loaded with nuclear or not. And they only knew what happened. Like they only learned if this was a nuclear or not after the impact happened, right, in Ukraine. So I think that nobody should be wishing for this situation to escalate any further, and this is something that I'm sometimes in Arabic we say that. A hair has grown on my tongue, like for speaking and repeating myself. Yeah, I would repeat myself again, guys. This is not a game. So if you're thinking that this is some sort of an excitement or some sort of a game, it's not. Now, some say that Russia has given prior notice to the Americans, but they didn't say if this weapon was loaded with nuclear or not. However, there are many things. For example, some of the reports say that the United States told the Americans only 30 minutes before they launched the strike, and they didn't say or specify any details about the attack, so they didn't know. And however, when the strike happened, this was because of the type of the strike and the weapon used. This was enough to give the impression to the NATO side and to enact the nuclear safety protocol, and to at least to take precautions against it. And I think in this case, the Americans didn't know if this was a nuclear or not. They just waited to see the result of the attack and then to evaluate if it was or not. So when the attack happened, this type of missiles, it takes 2 or 3 minutes maximum to fly into Ukraine. It's like a supersonic or hypersonic missile. So in a few minutes, probably the Americans and the Europeans thought this was a nuclear attack on the Dnipro, and then it turned out to be a conventional attack. So I think it's important also to note that this type of attack could escalate this conflict into extent that in the near future we could see nuclear exchange. And this is going to be the end of humanity the way we know it. And then there is nowhere safe, guys. You know that, right? Like you're in Eastern Europe or Western Europe or in the Nordic countries or in the Middle East. Like this is going to be very messy, right? So let's hope that some sanity prevails at the end of the day. Putin, he gave a speech after the attack, and he said that he said a few things, basically, one of which is that Russia has proven that it can deliver a conventional or nuclear payload to any place without a problem. He said the missile cannot be intercepted and it works, and the Americans do not have any technological means to stop it. And he said that this type of missile flies 3 kilometers per second. He said that the missile, many Russian channels reported that this weapon was called Hazel or something. I'm going to show you a few other things about this. I think it's important to first see what Putin said. He said that Russia considers itself entitled to use hypersonic weapons against facilities of those countries that allow their weapons to be used against Russian facilities. He said Russia will respond decisively and in kind to escalation. The elites of the countries that plan to use their military against us should seriously think about that. He said Russia will warn Ukrainian civilians before incoming strikes so they can leave the area. This is done because there are no air defense systems in the world who can intercept hypersonic systems like Hazel. Dmitry Medvedev, then he tweeted saying something like, so that's what you wanted? Well, you have damn well got it, a hypersonic ballistic missile attack. Putin then also said, we are ready to solve all questions by peaceful means, but we are ready for any development of the situation. We're ready to solve all questions by peaceful means, etc., etc. The regional conflict in Ukraine has acquired elements of global nature. I'm going to show you the full video of Putin later, but before that, I'm going to show you what Zelensky said. Zelensky, after the attack, he made a video. So Zelensky also posted it on X. He says, today our insane neighbor has once again revealed its true nature, its disdain for dignity, freedom, and human life itself, and most of all, its fear. Let's take a look what he has to say.
Дорогі українці, українки, 21 листопада Україна відзначає День Гідності та Свободи. Згадує дві українські революції, вшановує те, які українці насправді. Сьогодні ж наш божевільний сусід вкотре показав, який він насправді, як він зневажає і гідність, і свободу, і взагалі життя людей. І як він боїться. Боїться настільки, що застосовує вже нові ракети. І шукає по світу, де б ще знайти зброю. То в Ірані, то в Північній Кореї. Сьогодні була нова російська ракета. Всі характеристики – швидкість, висота міжконтинентальної балістичної. Зараз тривають експертизи. Очевидно, що Путін використовує Україну як полігон. Очевидно, що Путін боїться, коли поруч з ним просто є нормальне життя. Коли люди просто мають гідність. Коли країна просто хоче бути і має право бути незалежною. Путін робить все, що завгодно, тільки б не дати сусіду вирватись з його рук. І я дякую всім українцям, усім українкам, які захищають Україну від цього зла. Стійко, хоробро, міцно, гідно. Це одне з головних слів про Україну – гідність. І це слово, яке, мабуть, вже ніколи не скажуть про Росію. Сьогодні я підпишу указ, яким введено в силу рішення РНБО саме про гідність, про повагу до справжніх героїв, героїв України, до усіх наших гідних людей і про чесне ставлення до тих, хто обрав іншу сторону, обрав Росію і підлість. В першому списку таких осіб 34 прізвища. Слава Україні!
You know, I'm going to be very honest with you. If I was the Ukrainian president and I'm under such very dire situation and I lost entire eastern oblasts to my enemy, you know, I would have probably said similar things. I would have not put myself in his place anyways, but I'm just saying that his desperation knows no limits at the current moment, and what he says here basically doesn't match the reality. It doesn't match the outcome of the conflict. What's the reality on the ground, where the Russians have occupied, what oblasts have they annexed and occupied and included them into the Russian Federation, and what's the situation on the front lines, what happened to the trenches, what happened to the fortifications. And, you know, on the front line, the situation is very, very bad for Ukraine. And at the same time, because of this desperate, like, everything is upside down. It's the attack of Ukraine against Russia using these attackams that we can call desperate. Because, first of all, in order for Ukraine to achieve concrete results and consequences and victories against Russia, they need hundreds of these missiles. And they need to hit their targets in Russia. So how many missiles, attackams have the Americans and the Brits supplied to Ukraine? Not much, not many. And are the Americans and the Brits have the capacity to produce enough of this? No. Therefore, Ukraine has put itself in a situation that it has escalated without concrete results and without hope for a victory. and at the same time, it has brought itself more escalation from the Russian side. So it's a lose equation for the Ukrainians, unfortunately for the Ukrainians, and they have a president who is selling them illusions. This is the problem with living in a bubble among these elite politicians who themselves live in a bubble, who themselves listen to the think tanks that are funded by themselves, and listen to the journalists who are funded by themselves. So everybody is listening to everyone in this bubble, and they're repeating the same thing over and over again, and they're all lying to each other. This is not about dignity. This is not about the freedom. This is not about the that Ukrainians have a lavish or beautiful lifestyle there, and the Russians are somehow envy. We have to be honest with the people. This is a geopolitical conflict between NATO and Russia, and the NATO side has expanded too far to the east of Berlin Wall when they promised not to expand, and they reached to the borders of Russia, and Russia invaded Ukraine, which is illegal under international law, but it was provoked by NATO. And the reason for that was they wanted to create a Ukraine that is a pawn country that can install NATO early, let's say, alarm systems and also defensive systems for any future nuclear attacks or exchange between the both sides. They also built many of the laboratories in Ukraine, and they armed Ukraine to the teeth. So this was something that started in 2014 and even before 2014, because for NATO and for the EU, they don't accept a middle ground. Like, this is the same situation in Armenia nowadays. Like, you have a prime minister in Armenia, Pashinyan. It's not acceptable for NATO and for the EU, who are the allies of Pashinyan, to be in the middle between Russia and the West. You either pick Russia or you either pick the EU or NATO. That's why this zero-sum game and not giving people choices, basically, it brings such conflicts. And this is what I try to warn the Armenians, that you can have good relationship with the West, but don't antagonize Russia, because Russia is becoming a superpower, and Southern Caucasus is a very important, vital geopolitical energy trade region. So if you antagonize Russia, Russia will harm you. At the end, the interests of Russia is too big to accept this type of policies from a small country, Armenia, that is trying to sabotage the Russian sphere of influence, right? People have to see things not from an idealistic point of view, but rather realistic. People need to understand geopolitics, needed to understand, to put a geography and map in front of them and understand each country's worth, value, and what are the pros and what are the cons and what are your cards and how you can play with your allies and with your enemies. Because even your allies, guys, they don't have the best interests in their hearts, because Russia is Russia and they care about their interests. So when they came to Syria, you have to know what are your cards to play even with your ally, because your ally is helping you, but there is a price that you have to pay for that. So you have to also negotiate that, right? So I don't like the leaders and the countries that turn themselves into pawns. Now, Syria, for example, the Iranians came to help Syria, Hezbollah came to help Syria, Russia came to help Syria militarily. Has Syria become a pawn for them? No. Up until this moment, like only last week or 10 days ago, the Israelis told the Russians if they can mediate with Syria and ask them to stop sending weapons to Hezbollah. And the Russians come and talk to you diplomatically and say, like, is this possible? Is this a suggestion? I'm delivering you a message from Israel. And when the Syrians said no, the Russian ambassador to the UN, I believe he said something like, our jurisdiction in Syria doesn't include like stopping arm flows to Lebanon or something, you know? So I don't like when Zelensky comes and lies to his people. I don't like that he's using also his own people as cannon fodder against Russia. I don't like people to pay such price. Hundreds of thousands of them get killed because a group of leaders, politicians, elites, journalists are selling illusions to the people and sending these youngsters to the front lines. The best case scenario for Ukraine now is a political settlement that gives away a large swath of its territories in the east to Russia. This is not my wishful thinking. I'm just an analyst and seeing the map of control. The 4 oblasts and the Crimea. But before February 2022, it was possible to keep all the oblasts except for Crimea. And in April and March 2022, just 2 months after the war started against Ukraine, and this Turkish communique and the agreement that was sealed in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine, that would have also gave Ukraine back the 4 oblasts and only the Crimea stayed with Russia. But Zelensky chose to not sign that peace agreement because Boris Johnson and Biden told him that they will support him militarily, logistically, politically, as long as it takes. So whether he believed it or not, I mean, if he believed them, he's an idiot. If he didn't believe them and he knew what is going to happen, that's even worse. In any case, this is a horrible situation in Ukraine, and I don't see there is a way out, unfortunately, from this. I was going to show you the speech of Putin. I don't know, maybe I will show you at the end of this stream, because now I have other topics to cover, and we're already in the 36 minutes of this stream. But if you're interested to watch the entire Putin speech, I'm going to play it at the end of this stream. Okay, it's 7 minutes, so I will play it to you so that I show you what Zelensky said. I could also show you what Putin said. Now, the British ambassador, the ambassador of Russia to the UK, says that Britain is directly involved in the Ukraine war now. This is what Russia sees. Russia sees that Great Britain and the United States are direct part of this conflict, and this changes the calculations of Russia in a way that how Russia will respond from now on. Also, they have to take into consideration that there are American contractors and British contractors on the ground in Ukraine operating this type of missiles. So when attacks happen against military facilities in Ukraine, they could also kill these American and British contractors. I think this is how Russia will try to keep the conflict now, to keep it inside Ukraine. They don't want to expand the war to other NATO countries, and especially that the United States is in a transitional period and they have to wait and see how Trump will react about this type of attacks against Russia. Now, I think there are multiple analysts talking sane about this case, and I really think that some of the very well-known famous analysts nowadays are very they are, their message is very sensational, let's say, and they are trying as if to start a war between NATO and Russia. And when the attacks happens against Russia, they were like urging Russia to nuke Ukraine. And those are like very famous analysts. And I was like, what the fuck they're talking about? Like, are they insane? Are they drunk? Like, don't type if you're drunk, you know? And even if you're not drunk and you think that's the best solution or the response, I think that I have some suspicions now about you. Because if you, for the past 2 years, you were siding with Russia, basically, and saying that Russia's war was provoked, and rightfully analyzing the situation, the expansion of NATO, and also rightfully or correctly analyzing that Ukraine doesn't have a chance. But when these attacks happened against Russia, all of a sudden, as if the sanity has faded away. And these people, and those are not ordinary people, those are very famous analysts, were like, oh, Russia has now to nuke Ukraine. It's just Are you out of your mind? And especially if you're not Russian, what are you trying to start? Start a war in Europe between Russia and the United States? Between Russia and Europe, so that then Trump comes and says, "Oh, I don't want to participate in this conflict," so that Russia and Europe destroy each other, and then the United States emerges as the another again superpower from this conflict. Think about it. Some people who say that Russia should respond in a nuclear way, I'm very suspicious of them now, and I think that if this, God forbid, such a scenario happens, and Trump comes and says, "I don't want to be part of this conflict," then the Europeans will kill each other and destroy each other, and the Americans will emerge as another shining star and superpower again, right? So be wary of such voices, I would say. A sane person on X, however, has a good analysis in this case. I think he is Russian, but he has a very good analysis in this case. He says, "I'm still somewhat puzzled when people expect Russia to suddenly rain down a carpet of bombs on Kiev, on urban areas where civilians live, including schools, hospitals, kindergartens, and residential buildings, or when they think Russia might feel the urge to detonate a nuclear weapon in a Ukrainian city center purely as a show of force. Anyone who has followed Russia's military actions over the past 1,000 days should have come to understand by now that Russia would never do such a thing. In a war against a brotherly nation, indiscriminately targeting civilians without regard for the consequences is not something Russia would do. That is not going to happen. However, there will certainly be attacks, as always, on tactical and strategic targets. This might include civilian infrastructure that has dual use, but with an effort to minimize civilian casualties. This will likely be seen frequently and perhaps more intensively in the future. Ultimately, this will likely result in the complete shutdown of Ukraine's energy infrastructure, and this will not sit well with many people, those who want to see Russia or the Russian bear turn into a beast in an act of revenge. But this is something many fail to understand. The Russian bear only becomes a beast when its survival is at stake. The problem here is not Ukraine itself, but rather NATO lurking in the background. NATO would be wise to quickly acknowledge this defeat, back down, and withdraw from Ukraine entirely before it is forcibly expelled along with its allies. Brilliant. I really like this analysis. People who think that, the Russian bear has taken off his gloves and now they're going to nuke Ukraine. And there are people calling for it. I trusted some of these people's analysis, and now that I see these people I see them completely suspicious. That maybe you're pretending to be pro-logic for a long period of time and then gaining the trust of the people, and then when the decisive time comes, you're calling for a nuclear exchange. It's just is it a psychological operation? Are they psyop? Are there intelligence assets? I don't know. I can't really tell, but it's very suspicious to me. Thank you, Samer, for your support, Habibi. Thank you so much. In this case, the leader of Hungary, he made two contradictory statements, I would say. This is something very normalized nowadays among these so-called conservative power forces, that you see them talking sane and logic about what's happening in Ukraine, and then when it comes to Israel, all of a sudden they get like they lose their sanity completely. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Ukraine, says the 500-year era of Western civilization's dominance has come to an end, and the age of Eurasia is dawning, noting that it will not be easy for the West to come to terms with the fact that they are no longer the most beautiful and intelligent. Quote from what he said: "For several centuries, the West has been accustomed to thinking of itself as the most beautiful, the most intelligent, the most advanced, and the wealthiest. To suddenly see and acknowledge that we are no longer the most beautiful, intelligent, advanced, and wealthy is a challenging task," he stated. However, at the same time, just one day later, Viktor Orban, when the ICC issued the arrest warrant against Netanyahu and Gallant, he gave an interview to national Hungarian TV, and he said, the ICC arrest warrant against Prime Minister Netanyahu is brazen, cynical, and completely unacceptable. Brazen, cynical, and completely unacceptable. And he says that he invited Prime Minister Netanyahu for an official visit to Hungary where we will guarantee his freedom and safety. This is just today on his X account. And I could show you what he said. The ICC arrest warrant against Prime Minister Netanyahu is brazen, cynical, and completely unacceptable. I invited Prime Minister Netanyahu for an official visit to Hungary where we will guarantee his freedom and safety. Horrible. It's horrible. It is horrible. Yes, my friend, they're exposing themselves, as you said. At the same time, there is something coming from Italy. Italy is making some bold decisions recently, or policies. I'm going to show you this letter. It was published by Francesca Albanese. She is the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories. And this is a letter coming from an Italian court decision. And today it doesn't rain, it pours. Important decision in the Italian justice system regarding the status of Jerusalem. Stop calling it the capital of Israel. It is not. And the judge's motivation is really touching, worth reading for those who can. So this is an Italian, basically. I'm going to translate it now. So this is a decision by an Italian court that says, historic ruling by the Rome court that orders to rectify what was said during a famous TV program. The question of the qualification of Jerusalem is an identity question very strong that directly involves the actors, Palestinians, as the issue of the status of Jerusalem represents a very important, crucial, and painful issue in the history of the Palestinian people. And this is where the need to spread correct information on the issue lies, as it is inherent to identify of the collective subject that the associations of actors represent. So just to summarize you what happened, it seems that there was a TV program in Italy, and the journalist called Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And so there was a backlash in Italy and saying that Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel. So the second day, she corrected herself and said, this is a controversial issue and there are two sides of the story. You know, she tried to do a two-sidism. So there were people in Italy, they took this to the court. And they wanted for the Rome court to decide and say and give an opinion under international law. And the court decided in Rome that under international law, Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel, according to international law and all the relevant resolutions under the UN Security Council, but rather it is Tel Aviv that is the capital of Jerusalem, capital of Israel. So we have another surprise. This is a surprise for me, to be honest with you. I truly detest this guy with everything, like, with the bottom of my guts. I really dislike him. But Trudeau says that they will comply with the decision of the ICC. That's a surprising. Take a look.
Now that the ICC has issued warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Canadian law enforcement is obligated to arrest them should they come to Canada. Will you allow that to happen, or will you step in to prevent an arrest?
First of all, as Canada has always said, it's really important that everyone abide by international law. This is something we've been calling on from the beginning of the conflict. We are one of the founding members of the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice. We stand up for international law, and we will abide by all the regulations and rulings of the international courts. This is just who we are as Canadians.
So Trudeau says he will abide by international law and the ICC's decision. I never expected that I would clap for Trudeau. This is the first time I say bravo. Maybe this is his first correct decision ever. But let's see. Maybe he changes his position again in the future. You know. But most interestingly, look. The EU's Borrell of the EU, he said that the EU countries will abide. Belgium said that they will abide by. The Netherlands said they will abide by the decision of the ICC. Many European countries said. Hungary said no. I think the Prime Minister of Austria said they will not abide, and now Germany is it took them 24 hours to make the first statement. So what is the position of Germany? Germany is part of the EU, and the leader or Borrell of EU says that the EU countries will abide by the decision. But Germany had some, I don't want to call it controversial, it's just complex. Let's call it a complex. So this is the literal translation of the decision. They say the federal government has taken note of the decision of the International Criminal Court on the arrest warrants requested against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The federal government was involved in drafting the ICC statute and is one of the ICC's biggest supporters. The position is also the result of German history. So they brought up again German history. So they support the ICC, but also we have a German history, they say. At the same time, it is a consequence of German history that we share unique relations and great responsibility with Israel. Therefore, we will carefully examine the domestic steps. Any further action would only be taken when a stay by Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Minister Yoav Gallant in Germany is foreseeable. So they don't say that they will arrest him, and they don't say that they will not arrest him. Basically, they say that we support the ICC, but at the same time, we have a special responsibility for Israel because of the history. So what does that mean? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But the spokesperson for the government today, he was confronted basically by a journalist. I think his channel is Young and Naive. This is just a few seconds long video. So this is the spokesperson of the German government, and he was confronted today by a journalist. And he said, I find it hard to imagine that we would make arrests in Germany on this basis, on the ICC arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant.
Zu sehen, ich könnte mich dazu hinreißen lassen, zu sagen, dass es mir schwerfällt, mir vorzustellen, dass wir auf dieser Grundlage Verhaftungen in Deutschland durchführen.
So, at one side, the German government, the formal statement says that they support the ICC, but they have a special historical responsibility for Israel. They don't say that they will arrest him, and they don't say they will not arrest him. But here, the spokesperson of the government verbally says that I find it hard to imagine that we would make arrests in Germany on this basis, on the ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu and Gallant. And the German press were very, of course, active in the past 24 hours and trying to, tell the people that this is a horrible thing and we have a responsibility for Israel, this and that. But they basically hosted someone yesterday on the Welt TV. Welt is I don't know, they call it a conservative right-wing conservative platform. So they had a show yesterday. I just translated this to English for you. This guy is the director of the American Jewish Committee in Berlin. His name is Dr. Remco Limhuis. He's the director of the American Jewish Committee in Berlin. He criticized the decision of ICC. He says because no arrest warrants were issued against other heads of state, such as Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And he says there is not even an arrest warrant against butcher Bashar al-Assad. Now, there are two things about this. First, this is whataboutism. Like, you cannot issue an arrest warrant against my leaders because you didn't issue an arrest warrant against other leaders. I mean, then we can commit crimes, right? That's not international law, basically. And what really struck me is not him talking, this guy, the director. What really struck me that there were two journalists, two TV hosts sitting in front of him and listening him and not even telling him that how can the ICC issue arrest warrants against Syria if Syria is not a signatory of the Rome Statute. Like, you have journalists nowadays, they don't know international law. They don't study this international criminal justice or international criminal courts. They don't know what is Rome Statute. And they don't know that Syria is not a signatory of the ICC. Therefore, ICC doesn't have a jurisdiction over Syria to issue. So hypothetically, if Bashar al-Assad committed war crimes and crimes against humanity and committed a genocide, ethnic cleansing, and burned the babies alive, like the Israeli army is doing, hypothetically, then the ICC doesn't have a jurisdiction over him. There has to be a special court formed in the UN under UN Security Council resolution to follow this case. And there is not, right? So the ICC doesn't have a jurisdiction over Syria to begin with. And nobody in this studio said something about it, like how can they issue an arrest warrant if Syria is not a signatory of the Rome Statute? And secondly, nobody says that because the Israelis say, oh no, ICC doesn't have a jurisdiction, we are not a signatory of the Rome Statute. Yes, but no. No, because these crimes are committed on occupied Palestinian territories in Gaza. And Palestinian territories, or the Palestinian Authority, is a signatory of the Rome Statute. So the ICC has a jurisdiction over the Israeli officials committing these crimes on Palestinian territories. Voila, it was easy, but because you don't, nowadays TV channels, everything is a propaganda that they feed the people this, this type of misleading information, and the people make up their minds about such things. And it's if you think what they say in a German in this German environment is bad, I mean, wait to see what the American officials are saying in this case. And this is Tom Cotton, by the way, who is paid by AIPAC. He says the ICC is a kangaroo court and Karim Khan is a deranged fanatic. Woe to him and anyone who tries to enforce these outlaw warrants. Let me give them all a friendly reminder. The American law on the ICC is known as the Hague Invasion Act for a reason. Think about it. And I told him, you're a psycho. And I'm not going to show you every single now tweet and post made by American officials, but rest assured, I've seen tens of them. Tens of American officials, congressmen and congresswomen are coming, Israel is our best ally in the world, stand with Israel, this and that, and calling ICC names. And all of them are paid by AIPAC. All of them. And I wasn't wrong when I called these American, those who control America, as ruthless, psychopathic sociopaths. Because they are. And for those who don't know what is the Hague Invasion Act, I mentioned this previously, but I think it deserves to shed light on this. This is the Hague Invasion Act, guys. In 2002, the United States signed the Hague Invasion Act into law, which states that if any US, NATO, or Israeli officials are charged with war crimes, arrested and brought to the International Criminal Court, the United States will invade and destroy the city and the court. This is the law, guys. So a new law supposedly protecting US service members from the International Criminal Court shows that the Bush administration will stop at nothing in its campaign against the court. US President George Bush today signed into law the American Service Members Protection Act of 2002, which is intended to intimidate countries that ratify the Treaty for the International Criminal Court, ICC. The new law authorizes the use of military force to liberate any American or citizen of a U.S. allied country being held by the court, which is located in The Hague. This provision, dubbed the Hague Invasion Clause has caused a strong reaction from US allies around the world, particularly in the Netherlands. So, dear American people, if you thought that your soldiers maybe could killed in a war against Iran, I read this joke on X the other day. If you thought that your American soldiers are going to die in a war against Iran, think again. Maybe they will die in the Netherlands, this time invading The Hague. Oh my God, man. This is crazy. This is really crazy. Oh, the time flies. It's already 59 minutes. I can't believe that I've been speaking for 59 minutes to you guys. I'm really happy to deliver to you today's stream and podcast. I'm very happy to see all these 1,000 people watching this on YouTube alone, and on Rumble as well. There are many people watching. Thank you so much, guys, really, for this. I really appreciate it. But stay, because I'm going to show you the speech of Putin now. And while you're watching this, it would be an amazing. You would give me great honor and great service if you subscribe to this YouTube channel. It gives me lots of it gives lots of credibility to my work when I'm inviting experts to come to the channel. Some of them big names, for example, they like to see, you know, a YouTube channel that has over 100,000 subscribers. We are at 82,000. Is it possible to go to 90,000 before the new year? That would be amazing. I would really appreciate it. If you're watching this, please consider subscribing. I'm going to also thank Irene. Salam, peace, brother Kevork. Thank you for unbiased and precise news. Mashallah, may Allah bless you. Do you have a Telegram channel where you can share videos that considered not halal? Also, your fans are chat in a safe place. Also, your fans can chat in a safe place. So do you mean that there are people abusing the chat in Telegram? It's really difficult to, I'm blocking people, banning people on Telegram bots, and people are coming saying unfortunate things. Unfortunately, I personally don't have a time to check everything. That's the problem, you know? And I will try to check daily and block these people again as much as I can. On Telegram, I have my Syriana Analysis group where I am just posting a poster of the everyday's streams and calling for the people to join the stream, you know. And if you want to look for it, it is Syriana Analysis, just t.me/Syriana Analysis. This is the official channel. And rest assured, I don't sell any cryptos. I don't sell anything to people, guys. Don't respond to these people, and don't respond to people saying that, oh, I'm Syriana Analysis, I need money, can you donate this and that. I would never do that on Telegram or send you private messages. I'm here on my podcast every day, and I'm just telling to the people, if they want to support Syriana Analysis, the link is here, scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. That's it. I don't come and send people private messages. Now I will play to you guys the video of the speech of Putin, so you can also see what he said in this case. So I wish you a great weekend. I wish you peace to you and to your families, and we will see each other on Monday, but probably 1 or 2 hours later, because I have driving. I'm doing driving license here now in Germany. I passed the theory, so I have to do practice now. So the first 1.5 hours is going to be on Monday, and it's unfortunately going to be like 1 hour before my live streaming. But I will announce when the live streaming will start. So peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.
Хочу проинформировать личный состав вооруженных сил Российской Федерации, граждан нашей страны, наших друзей во всем мире, а также тех, кто продолжает питать иллюзии о возможности нанесения стратегического поражения России, о тех событиях, которые происходят сегодня в зоне проведения специальной военной операции. А именно после применения по нашей территории дальнобойного оружия западного производства. Продолжая курс на эскалацию спровоцированного Западом конфликта на Украине, США и их союзники по НАТО ранее заявили о том, что дают разрешение на применение своих систем дальнобойного высокоточного оружия по территории Российской Федерации. Экспертам хорошо известно, и российская сторона это неоднократно подчеркивала, что использовать подобное оружие без прямого участия военных специалистов стран-производителей такого оружия невозможно. 19 ноября 6 оперативно-тактическими ракетами «Атакамс» производства США и 21 ноября в ходе комбинированной ракетной атаки системами «Шторм Шедоу» производства Великобритании и «Химмерс» производства США были нанесены удары по военным объектам на территории Российской Федерации в Брянской и Курской областях. С этого момента, как мы неоднократно подчеркивали, ранее спровоцированный Западом региональный конфликт на Украине приобрел элементы глобального характера. Наши системы противовоздушной обороны отражали эти атаки. В результате цели, которые очевидно были поставлены перед собой противником, не достигнуты. Возникшее на складе боеприпасов в Брянской области возгорание от падения обломков ракет «Атакамс» ликвидировано. Жертв и серьезных разрушений нет. В Курской области нападение было совершено на один из командных пунктов нашей группировки «Север». В результате атаки и противовоздушного боя есть, к сожалению, пострадавшие, погибшие и раненые из числа личного состава подразделений внешней охраны объекта и обслуживающего персонала. Командный и оперативный состав пункта управления не пострадал и осуществляет в штатном режиме руководство действиями наших войск по уничтожению и выдворению частей противника из Курской области. Еще раз хочу особо подчеркнуть, что применение противником подобного оружия не в состоянии повлиять на ход боевых действий в зоне специальной военной операции. Наши войска успешно наступают по всей линии боевого соприкосновения. Все задачи, которые мы перед собой ставим, будут решены. В ответ на применение американского и британского дальнобойного оружия 21 ноября текущего года российские вооруженные силы нанесли комбинированный удар по одному из объектов оборонно-промышленного комплекса Украины. В боевых условиях было проведено в том числе и испытание одной из новейших российских ракетных систем средней дальности. В данном случае с баллистической ракетой в безъядерном гиперзвуковом оснащении. Наши ракетчики назвали ее «Орешник». Испытания прошли успешно. Цель пуска достигнута. На территории Украины в городе Днепропетровске поражен один из крупнейших и известных еще со времен Советского Союза промышленных комплексов, который и сегодня производит ракетную технику, другое вооружение. Разработка ракет средней и меньшей дальности осуществляется нами в качестве ответной меры на планы США по производству и развертыванию ракет средней и меньшей дальности в Европе и Азиатско-Тихоокеанском регионе. Полагаем, что США совершили ошибку, разрушив в одностороннем порядке в 2019 году под надуманным предлогом договор о ликвидации ракет средней и меньшей дальности. Сегодня США не только производят такую технику, но, как мы видим, они в ходе мероприятий по подготовке своих войск отработали вопросы переброски в разные регионы мира, в том числе в Европу, своих перспективных ракетных систем. Более того, в ходе учений они проводят тренировки по их применению. Напомню, Россия добровольно в одностороннем порядке взяла на себя обязательство не развертывать ракеты средней и меньшей дальности до тех пор, пока американское оружие подобного рода не появится в каком-либо регионе мира. Повторю, испытания в боевых условиях ракетной системы «Орешник» проводятся нами в ответ на агрессивные действия стран НАТО в отношении России. Вопрос о дальнейшем развертывании ракет средней и меньшей дальности будет решаться нами в зависимости от действий США и их сателлитов. Объекты для поражения в ходе дальнейших испытаний наших новейших ракетных комплексов будут определяться нами, исходя из угроз безопасности Российской Федерации. Мы считаем себя вправе применять наше оружие против военных объектов тех стран, которые позволяют применять свое оружие против наших объектов. А в случае эскалации агрессивных действий будем отвечать также решительно и зеркально. Об этом рекомендую серьезно задуматься и правящим элитам тех стран, которые вынашивают планы использовать против России свои воинские контингенты. Разумеется, выбирая в случае необходимости и в качестве ответных мер объекты для поражения такими системами, как «Орешник», на территории Украины, мы будем заранее предлагать мирным жителям, а также просить находящихся там граждан дружественных государств покинуть опасные зоны. Будем делать это по гуманитарным соображениям. Открыто, публично, без опасения противодействия со стороны противника, также получающего эту информацию. Почему без опасения? Потому что средств противодействия такому оружию на сегодняшний день не существует. Ракеты атакуют цели со скоростью 10 махов. Это 2,5-3 км в секунду. Современные, имеющиеся в мире системы противовоздушной обороны и создаваемые американцами системы противоракетной обороны в Европе подобные ракеты не перехватывают. Это исключено. Подчеркну еще раз, что не Россия, а именно США разрушили систему международной безопасности. И, продолжая бороться, цепляться за свою гегемонию, толкают весь мир к глобальному конфликту. Мы всегда предпочитали и сейчас готовы решать все спорные вопросы мирными средствами. Но мы готовы также и к любому развитию событий. Если в этом кто-то еще сомневается, то напрасно. Ответ всегда будет.